This is another cartoon. The customer in the middle of this cartoon is looking at the menus, and a lady is writing down the menus he's trying to order. Okay, and if you see all the other guests in the restaurant, all the customers are pigs, okay, except for the lady and the gentleman. The gentleman is ordering the menu of ham and egg, and he says, okay, I think ham and egg would be great. And when he orders his food, all the other customers in these restaurants are looking at this gentleman because he is ordering the meats of the pigs. So pigs are so surprised that this man is ordering something of their meat. Okay? So the implication of this cartoon is that be sensitive to the needs of the audience. So who is the audience in the problem solving? In a lot of consulting cases, the customers are the audiences. So before tackling the problem solving, the consultants should be very cautious and sensitive to the needs of the customers and incorporate such needs into the good problem statement. But in case of the losing my weight, myself is the audience. So the implications in describing what is the problem, be sensitive to the needs and wants of the somebody who asked you to solve the problems. Okay, this cartoon shows they are dating in a restaurant. The gentleman is wearing a suit with a tie and with a very formal clothes. But if you look below the table, he's wearing a very funny looking shoes. He may think that the lady is looking only at his appearances or the costumes above the table, but actually the lady is mentioning that she judges a man by the shoes he is wearing. So in this case, this gentleman, even though he wears a suit, but he cannot get a good score from this lady because the lady is judging the man by the shoes he is wearing. So the implication of this cartoon is that make sure you consider the decision maker's criteria. So it's quite similar. The message is quite similar. Be sensitive to the needs of the audience and make sure you consider the decision maker's criteria. That means who gives the problem to you? That is the audience, or that is the decision maker. So be very sensitive to what is the problem. Okay, and before conducting the analysis, think about what is the problem, and then do not rely on your judgment what the problem is, but be sensitive to the person's request who gives the problems to you. Okay. This cartoon is about timing. The man is hunting the fish is very big. He used his friend as a decoy to catch up the fish. The timing is really important. Once he's a little bit late and his friend may be the food of this fish, so the timing is very important. Before the fish eats his friend, he has to throw his weapons to the fish, right? So pay attention to the due date and timing. So in describing what is the problem, you also have to think about the timing and the date. If the timing is 6 months, you can do a lot more analysis intensively. But if you are given only 1 week for analysis or your problem solving, and you have to adjust all your analysis and then scope of your project into such timing of the 1 week. Okay, so this is the template of problem solving. In the problem statement, at least you may include 7 elements. The first one is problem statement. Okay, as I said, the problem statement should be very simple. Clearly state what is the problem, but I recommend you to write the problem statement as quantitatively as possible instead of the writing qualitatively. Quantitatively means try to use the numbers to show what the problem is. So in the case of my losing the weight by doing diet, instead of simply saying I want to lose my weight, or I recently gained a lot of weight by coronavirus, that's not good problem statement. Instead, good problem statement describes that I want to lose my weight by 20 kilograms in 6 months. By emphasizing and illustrating the numbers, 20 kilograms, it's easier for the stakeholders to understand what the real problem is. And then number 2, background or context. A person who gives you the problem, he understands why he thinks this is the problem. He understands all the background very well. But the problem who is supposed to solve the problem may not understand the background or the context of the person who is giving the problems. So as the problem solver, you have to be very sensitive to the needs of the person who is giving the problem and tries to summarize the background of the problems very clearly. By doing that, it helps you to understand what the real problem is. And then, as I said, number 3, decision maker. And who gives you the problems? And then who is the person to implement the solutions of these problems later on? That's somebody of the decision maker. And number 4, key stakeholders. Stakeholders are not decision makers, but they are the very critical people who are very helpful in solving the problems. They are the people who gives and provides some objective evidences, or those are the people who will provide some of the creative solutions. And criteria for success, and even though you clearly define the problems, it helps you to describe the problems more clearly. So criteria for success means illustrate some criterias, and then once those criterias are fulfilled, you may quickly identify whether the problem is solved or not. Number 6, constraints within solution space. That means you can describe the time and resource constraint. So, for example, we have to implement these solutions in 6 months, or project timing is only 1 month, or the budget of this implementing this problem is $1 million or $10 million. In scope and out of scope of the solutions, those are the what to analyze and what not to analyze, and do's and don'ts things. This is the example of problem statement. In this case, the problem is improving operating margin through the increase of the market share of the major product X. Let me briefly explain this problem a little bit more. The company is selling product X. That's their major product. And the competitor is selling, for example, product Y. And if you see that the background of the context, that describes that the background and the context of these issues. Recently, the competitor's sale of the product Y increased significantly, maybe from 10 billion won last year to 30 billion won this year. There might be a typo error, okay? So recently, the competitor's sale of the product Y increased 300 times. But the market itself is very maturing, and then the size is a little bit shrinking. Average annual growth rate is -5%. So the aggregated market is not growing, but actually it's shrinking. But in this market, the competitor is selling their product a lot. And to respond to the competitor's attack, we increased our advertisement and promotional expenditures by 3% every year, right? But the problem, if you look at the problem statement, we have some problems in our operating profit margins. So we want to increase our company's operating profit margin by increasing market share of its flagship product X. That's the problem we want to tackle. But I said that in the problem statement, it's better for you to quantify the problem using the number. So if I simply say improve our company's operating profit margin by increasing market share of the flagship product X, it's not clear how much we have to increase, right? And then you look at the number 5, criteria for success. And if you look at the number 5, and we want to increase the market share of product X by 20%. We also want to increase our sales of the product X by 30%. that means up to 30 billion won. And we want to achieve our operating profit of product X to 5 billion won. If we satisfy 3 of those key criteria, and then we can say our problem of increasing operating profit margin of product X is solved. Who are the decision makers in this problem solving? The CEO and CFO and head of sales. Okay, they are the decision makers who make a decision about implementing the proposed solutions. And who are the key stakeholders? A lot of key executives in the companies. For example, head of the marketing, head of the product development, or head of the productions. They are the key stakeholders in solving these problems. And what are the constraints within solution space? The performance impact of this problem solving should be visible within a year. So they want a very short-term measures instead of the long-term solutions. And also, in terms of the budgets, we want to minimize additional capital investment in solving these problems. So those are the constraints. So under this constraint, we will look at some of the short-term measures without spending additional capital investment. Number 7, in scope and out of scope of solution, do's and don'ts. In this section, we specifically describes the scope of the work included and the scope of the work not included. For example, we capture the opportunities for improvement across the 4P areas. 4P means product, price, place, and promotions. What could be the out-of-scope areas in this problem solving? Launching a new product, or merger or acquiring competing companies' product lines. So in developing our business strategies, launching a new product is not the area we will focus on, and M&As is not the area we would like to cover. We only cover the organic growth of our performance. And then in order for us to find out the solutions, we will cover all 4P areas. Okay? This is the brief statement about what is the good problem statement. Okay, let me summarize today's class, the key lessons. Okay, first, I introduced the overall 7-step process of the problem solvings, and without this process, ordinary people may jump into the conducting the analysis without properly defining the problem, disaggregating the issues, prioritizing the issues, developing the work plans. And those are typical process of intuitive thinkers, because they have the knowledge and experience. They jump on into the conducting the analysis cases. But as the strategic thinker, and we have to take very important steps before taking the analysis. And I said that defining the problem is one of the most critical and important steps in problem solving. And I also introduced the concept of the problem. What is the problem? That is simply the gap exists between the current state and the target state. And I illustrated what the problem is in two cases. One is engagement score case. The other is in 2 years how to eliminate our earnings gap. Okay, and I also introduced characteristics of the good problem statement, and finally I showed one of the examples of good problem statement which has the 7 elements in the problem statement. Okay, thank you very much for listening this class. This is about overview of the problem solving 7 steps, and hopefully you may understand what are the typical 7 problem solving steps, and when we say that the problem, what is the exact definition of the problems, and then finally you may understand what are the key elements of the good problem statement. And I want you to be familiarized with this problem of improving operating margin through the increase of the market share of the major product X, because this is the case we will use for the rest of the classes in building the business strategy. We will use this case to develop our business strategies in the series of my lectures. Okay, thank you very much, and hope to see you in the next class. My next class is okay. Thank you very much, and this is the end of my second class. Okay, thank you very much. Bye.